It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Envia Velman, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome back to André Pretorius, our friend in Japan, coaching there and former Springbok fly-off. We're going to be talking about what's happening with the Springboks, the alignment camps, everything. So let's start with that. Welcome back, André.
Hi, Envia. Good to be back. Look forward to this one.
Yeah, we thought it's a good time to start talking about the Springboks a little bit. We know that's where all our true passion lies. You know, we might be a Storm or a Bull or a Lions or a Shark supporter for that matter, but at the end of the day, we're all Springbok supporters. And Rassie, in his wisdom, has now, convened the first alignment camp of the year starting on Friday, the 7th of March. So I had a bit of a press conference this afternoon, not saying too much, but I wanted to talk to you about you being a former Springbok yourself. Firstly, what's the thinking behind alignment camps? Number one, were they ever around when you were a Springbok? And, why did they do these things?
They were definitely around when we were playing back then. I don't think they had this great name for it. And I also think the camps now will probably be a lot more detailed and well planned in terms of what they want to achieve because of the continuity of the personnel that's there within the top management and the players. So I think firstly, it's exactly what the word says, to align everybody, get everybody on the same page. You're playing in different clubs, but ultimately you're working towards one goal, and that's to keep the World Cup in 2027. And to do that, you need to have players on the same page in terms of mentality, tactical, strategic, the leadership, etc., etc. And these camps are a really good platform to do that on.
That's quite an interesting thing that, the Bulls play a certain way, the Stormers play another way, Sharks have their own way they're going, and the Lions obviously have a completely different style to most of them. How do you get players on a 6-day camp aligned? How do you get them out of that almost comfort zone that they are in their own unions or their own franchises and get them aligned? I mean, they're not going to run around in the field, are they? There's basically just PowerPoints from what I understand. Does that actually work? Do they actually get it done? Or how does Rassie, in his wisdom, and I call it that, his cleverness, how does he do that?
Firstly, knowing Rassie, I think it's going to be fun. I think there'll be a big connection emphasis in these camps, because that's what's been the heartbeat of Springbok teams in the last couple of years. They've been really close. You can see when they play against each other in the derbies with each other, they look like mates. And those in successful teams all across the board, that's one thing you'll see, is that they look like friends and they get along very well. So I think the connection part there'll be a big emphasis, getting to know the new guys in there. But then also, I think it's a bit of exposure to the game model, to their game model, to see, firstly for the young guys, to see what the protocols are, how they go about their business. You're not going to remember everything. You'll probably be given a document or exposed to some of the strategies and tactical stuff, but you're not going to remember everything. I think it's just getting some exposure to their way of thinking first, their way of doing, and then going away with something that you can take and bring back to the next one if you're privileged enough to be there. So I think it's just getting more familiar with the game model with limited exposure in a short space of time, but also not forgetting that connection and focusing on the cohesion of this big group is also important.
By connection, you mean more of a team spirit, being a Springbok rather than a Bull or a Stormer. That kind of connection, that's what you're referring to.
For sure. And I think the fact that they've just gone through 3 or 4 derbies is fantastic. They've got something to talk about. There's going to be a lot of stories from the games that's just passed. So from that point of view, the timing's fantastic. But yes, the connection definitely is something that they'll focus on. They'll go into probably mini groups and come up with a couple of ideas, set up goals. Where would where do we want to be in 6 months from now? Where do you see us? What's, kind of deconstructed a bit, what's good, what's bad, etc., etc. But you'll have different groups working together and players getting to know each other on a different level.
Rassie mentioned this morning that I think we're playing 15 tests this year, and it's probably the most in, I don't know, 15, well, 20 years almost. He said that's actually a good thing because now they can give more of these players a chance to play for South Africa. I mean, there's 56 players in this camp, 16 of which are uncapped, and then the virtual camp is another one that starts on the 27th, I think. 26 players there, so there's over 80 players. How can they possibly fit all of them in? I mean, they have to. Do you see a lot of experimentation happening this year with an eye on the World Cup, which, it's only 2 years away? Do you think they're going to chop and change a lot and then settle on a team towards the end of the year, or maybe next year? Or what do you think Rassie's strategy is going to be?
Building combinations and building his depth charge has always been a very big strength of Rassie and the squads that he's put together. So I think he'd want to keep that, but he'd also want to try out different combinations. But in saying that, Envia, Rassie is always in the business of winning. He handles losses really well, and I think he gets them up after those, but he's in the business of winning. So I don't think he's going to just make changes and experiment for the sake of it. He'll still put, and maybe you got this. I always say that the Irish do this really well. They'll put a young 10 with a very experienced 9 and 12. That type of principle being followed. And I mean, obviously, Rassie's been coaching, or he coached in Ireland for quite a while. So, and we all know, Rassie was one of the best coaches that's ever coached the game. So I think building combinations, but also having one eye on keeping the performances up, because you can have connection as much as you want. You can have team spirit. Nothing builds team spirit like winning. And Rassie is not the type of coach that lets winning just paint over cracks. He identifies the cracks early, I think, and he kind of prevents the cracks from happening before, because he doesn't let anyone into that circle that doesn't show the right character.
No, that's an important point. That character thing, we just talked about it off air here. A couple of players that might not get the nod simply because of character. They don't fit into the profile of what Rassie wants, regardless of how good they are or how technically proficient they are. I wanted to ask you, you talked about depth now, and that refers to how many backup players are at each position. The biggest challenge for the Boks in 2 years' time to win the World Cup for a record 3rd time in a row is going to be the age profile of the players that have won the World Cup now twice. Some of them actually played in 2015 as well, still under Heineke Meyer, and they will still be around in 2027. Damien Dialenda is going to be 35, 36. Jesse's going to be 33. André Pollard's going to be probably 32, around there. A lot of players that are maybe moving on in years a little bit. Looking at the team and the squad as a whole, with an eye on 2027, where do you think the most pressing problems are in terms of age profile, and where Rassie is actually, where you can see Rassie's starting to bring players in to maybe play a backup role, or maybe even take over before 2027?
Well, I think it's going to depend on how they want that team to look, because in the older players, and I say older, in the more experienced players, you know exactly what you've got. You just don't know for how long you've got that. So let's say, for instance, Siya Kolisi. Siya's been playing off the bench for the Sharks. Obviously, coming back from, I think he was injured. But they'll work back and see how many games he should be part of during a year, what his minutes should look like when he's with the Springboks. And with his franchise, obviously they'll have a good relationship. But that's the type of thinking that'll go into, especially the more experienced players going on in age a bit. And obviously my first thing goes to Siya's position, because if Siya doesn't play, who do you make captain? Then you've got a new problem or new opportunity arising for someone. But if Sia's not going to be there, who do you make captain? If Sia is going to be there, who's going to be, who's going to be in that sixth position covering when Sia comes off, when he's not playing 80. So and I think that's when the combinations become really important. Age-wise, in every position, especially 2 to 6, there's a more experienced player in that position. And I don't know how many of them are going to see 2027 unless they are managed really well.
Okay, let's just look at some of these positions, starting at fullback. Apelele Fassi is in the driving seat at the moment. Willie Leroux needs another 2 tests to get to his 100, after which I think Rassie will probably put him out to pasture. Damien Willemse and then Kewan Horn. Damien Willemse has been injured the entire season, but I would suspect, on a good day, a level playing field, you'll probably be the preferred. What's your thoughts?
I think it's going to depend on how quickly he gets back, because Apelele Fassi just looks like he's got an appetite to keep that jersey, and he's been really consistent. He hasn't, just off the top of my head, I can't remember games where he's had shockers, making mistakes. He just got better for me. High ball catching was phenomenal. He kicks the ball a long way. He shows a lot of intent, gets in the line a lot, makes his tackles at the back. So I think for me, I'd stick with Apelele Fassi at 15 for as long as possible, and have someone there that can back him up. With Willemse, he gives you a 10, 12, 15 option. If you want to go a 6-2 bench and he's not starting, he's that guy that can fill in there. I'm not too sure what we're going to see and how long Damien's going to take to get back to full fitness. Obviously, he's got time, but for me, Apelele Fassi is in that jersey and he should keep it.
Yeah, but you can't, put a player of Damien Willemse's caliber on the sidelines. I mean, he's been around for a while. That's going to be it's an interesting conundrum.
I think he's going to be a lot more important at 12 than he's probably going to be important at 15.
12.
Because Damien de Allende obviously is a bit older. André Pretorius is still injured, but for the box game model, they're going to need a physical 12, a big 12 to hit the ball up with Willemse. You kind of get more of a footwork and a robust 12, because he's got good size. He's strong enough to play in that. I just don't know, if Damien's not playing every game, André Pretorius, he'll probably be the next guy that fits into that game model. But we have also seen that when de Allende can get rid of the ball, Pretorius will probably carry it a bit more than he would let it go. Where I think Willemse would look to get rid of the ball before or after contact. And that's why I think Damien Willemse might be a 12 backup as well.
Well, you've also got Ethan Hooker there, which I think is who's one of the more exciting prospects, and David Kriel, of course, from the Bulls. The Bulls have played him at 13 a lot this season, but they've now moved him back to 12, which I think is his preferred position. I don't know. Do you think Willemse will be a preferred option above, for example, Ethan Hooker? That guy has got oodles of talent.
But where's he playing? He's playing on the wing at the moment. And the problem is, when you get into a Springbok setup, if you're not a specialist utility player like Damien Willemse, you want specialists in those positions. I agree with you. Hooker's a phenomenal rugby player. It's just, which position is he playing at the moment? He's playing on the wing. The other one at 12, which I haven't done my research on this. I'm thinking at the top of my head, just the way he plays and the robustness and the physicality. How do you think Henko van Wyk would go at 12?
I don't know. I saw he's penciled in as a 13, but I mean the body shape, the strength, the speed, the feet. I think he probably do pretty well at 12.
And distribution-wise, he can add some value there. So I'm just thinking, Andre's out, Damien's out. If we had to play a test now, and they were out, who would be the 12?
Good point.
And to add value to that game model in the way that they want it. So if they change the 12 to, someone that's not as physical, more distributive, you got to change the way you play. And I don't think they want to do that. And with Henko, you've got the ability to play the wide game, the expansive game, and to go short and be really physical in the middle. So that's just something I thought of.
The problem with him is he's so injury prone. I mean, now you put him into a position that's more physical, and he's probably going to be a target. Is he gonna be strong enough or robust enough?
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that I think some of the players bring it over themselves without even knowing. It's guys think that they're doing extra work off field and they're just loading up their volume more without even knowing. It's a knowledge thing. Now Henko looks like one of those players that works hard off field and he does extras, etc., etc. But it's also the way he plays India. He's not backing out of any battles. He wants to be physical. He wants to be body in front. So yeah, hopefully he can get over a couple of those and get a good range of games going, and his body holds up.
So at 13, you just mentioned, I mean, Henko is there as third option. Lucanio is probably the second, second in line. And I was quite impressed with him, seeing him playing it against the Bulls. I never realized how big he actually is. He's quite a tall guy. I didn't think he was such a, physically such an impressive specimen. He does quite well, but the guy who really impressed me was Lorenzo Julius. Geez, that guy was fast. And every time he touched the ball, the Bulls were in trouble in that specific game. I know he plays for the junior Springboks. That to me, he's probably the most exciting prospect of all of them.
What I like about him, MV, is the fact that he's matured very fast. And I'm not talking about as a 13, as a rugby player. I'm talking about as a person on the field. He's not that matriculite that wants to score every try and have the camera on him. If he is, he's hiding it really well, very well. But what I see on the field is he's playing to play again. He puts people into space. He backs up his passes. He works extremely hard on the field. And when the tries are scored, he's one of the first to congratulate. So I like the fact that he's gone that route on the biggest stage and on the next level. Because if you got that type of attitude with that ability and that speed, you've got the world at your feet.
Yes, he's fast. I tell you what. And that's nothing. Is only 21 or 20, even younger. I'm not sure, but he's quite young. He's one for the future. Now, getting back to the wings, Cheslin, Colby, Kurtley Arendse, how he calls them lackerbacks. Scrum cap wearing, swiveling hips. You can Harry always says they can sidestep you in a phone booth. They're the incumbents. But to me, that's a little bit. The backups are a bit light. Kane Moody's not having the greatest season of his life. Eto'o van der Merwe looks quite good. We saw him doing headstands this weekend after scoring a try. That was quite impressive. Sebastian de Klerk, the fourth in line at number 14. I'm not so sure about that. And then at 11, I think even more. I mean, you've got Makazole Mapimpi as second in line after Kurtley, and then Zuleiman Hartzenberg. That to me, those two positions, and especially if you take into consideration how important those two positions have become for the Springboks in the recent past, they seem to be a bit light there.
If you look at those names, there's an attacking flavor to them all. There's something. Every single one of those wings brings something different to the party. But again, when Cheslin and Kurtley doesn't play, it seems like teams get around us a bit easier. Now, some of the tests when Makazole was playing, it felt like in tests prior to that, he was taking a lot more chances than Cheslin or Kurtley was, going in really deep to go and finish a tackle and cut off wide plays, which obviously the wings for South Africa have got license to do. But in the latter part of the season, the test that he played, I was quite excited to see that, because I knew he takes chances and he makes reads out the back. He didn't do it. He stuck he's stuck in the line, or when he went late. And you could just see the difference when Cheslin and Kirtley wasn't playing, how teams get around us compared to when they are, and they get shut down on that second or third pass. And I think the important thing is, like I said, all of those wings have got attacking flair. They've got an attacking flavor to them. Kainan will be better. He'll improve. I have no doubt about that. I think there's a confidence thing. Does he want to play 13? Is he actually a wing, etc., etc.? He'll be better. I think what we're going to look at in again, according to how the Boks want to defend, can the rest of the wings do what Kirtley and Cheslin does when the chip's on the table, when the pressure's on, when you have to make a read? If they get around us, they probably score. Cheslin and Kirtley have become masters at cutting off wide plays for teams, and then they've got 3 or 4 man overlap on that. But they've just become so good reading cues, going in behind. And I think for me, that's going to be the secret. They can all attack, they chase lost causes, they work hard, but can they do their job and ensure that teams don't get around us?
Yeah, that to me, that's the worry. I mean, if they're not there, even if they have an off day and you have to replace them, to me, also, Mapimpi looked like he lost a yard or two of pace. He looks a bit slower than he used to be. It still looks in fantastic physical shape, but I just think in age is going to catch up to him, especially going into 2027. He's going to be a little bit more advanced. Suleiman Hartzenberg, I don't know. I'm not sure if he's in the same league. So that to me is a bit of a worry. I hear what you're saying. And now we're getting to the most pivotal position, I think, of any rugby team, but especially in South Africa, number 10. Fly-offs. Now, we heard the good news that, or the fantastic news that André Pollard's coming back to the Bulls, which means we'll be winning everything until the next World Cup anyway. Who do you think is the incumbent there? I mean, André has been coming off the bench for a while now. Mani, for all his problems, is still one of the most explosive, most exciting players in South Africa. Sasha, Storm was playing him at 12 mostly, and he got injured constantly. Is he a 12? Is he a 10? And then you've got Jordan Hendricks, obviously, and then Sisia Masuku, who's now also a bit of a late addition. What's your thoughts on 10?
Well, ask yourself this question. We play the Rugby World Cup final tomorrow. Who would you put in there? Who would you feel safe to go with playing in that? And for me, that's André. All-round game. He can look after himself physically. He's got great appreciation for where the space is tactically. So to me, he's the incumbent. I think Mani's working through a couple of things. Attacking wise, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And, but just not that all-round box that you want to tick for a 10. He's just not ticking them at the moment yet. He has done that in the past, and he can. I think Sasha's someone to look forward to. Maybe Sasha takes over at 10, 100 moves to 12 if needed. And then my worry is Jordan Hendricks. Again, a player that's played 10 and 15, but he's playing 15 for his franchise at the moment. And especially at 10, he's been put down as a 10. But if you had to play a test tomorrow, you probably won't play him at 10 because he's not specializing. You want someone that's specializing in that position. Now, I know, you get different types of tests where you play a Portugal or you play, etc., where you can take those chances and give people exposure to certain positions. But you're going into a rugby championship, you definitely want a specialist 10 at 10.
A mutual friend of ours, Hugh Griffin from HG Rugby, put up a video the other day. Some very interesting statistics. And he said, for example, I can't remember all of them, but Munster, for example, only took 1 kick at poles for a penalty this entire URC season so far. And he did that in conjunction with analyst Gus, well-known rugby analyst on Twitter, and a good friend of Harry as well. Now, you talked about, who do you want on the field in the last couple of minutes in a World Cup final? Clearly, André has, earned his spurs there, he showed what he can do. Isn't the game moving away from penalty kicks and moving towards not necessarily lineouts and mauls, but taps and goes, rather than going for post, because that seems to be a trend. And what does that mean for a player like André compared to an exciting running type fly off like Mani?
When I referred to Andre, I didn't just refer to his goal kicking. I referred to his all-round play. His defense is solid. His attack, he's probably not as quick and as explosive as Mani. And I think that's where Sasha's got a bit of both. He's probably the hybrid between Mani and Andre. So for me, it's that physicality that Andre brings in those types of situations, defending on your try line. Not that Mani doesn't tackle, he does, but Andre brings a physicality and a presence behind the collisions that I don't think probably Mani's built for.
Now, we joked about the number of scrum-halves that went to the World Cup, and I think there were 4. And now there's 9 in this group, starting with Jaden Hendrikse, Grant Williams, Kobus Reinach, Morne van der Berg, Faf de Klerk, Emrose Papier, Paul de Wet, Dursul Jantjies, and Nico Steyn. Why on earth would they have so many scrum-halves in one group?
I think all my scrum half mates would appreciate this, but they would say you can never have enough scrum halves in your team. Never. And I think with the way that Rassie picks his sides with 7-1, you want guys that can play numerous positions, and all scrum halves think they can play from 9 to 15. So that's probably one reason. I just think that jersey is very expensive, Mbia. And it's so important for the Springboks that whichever 9 is given the jersey for that game is the guy that you're gonna trust, that's gonna put those box kicks right on the spot, that's gonna make good decisions when it comes to playing in your own half, not playing in your own half, keeping the speed on the ball, playing on top of them, etc., etc. Having a really constructive approach to where you're directing the team with the 10. And I think that just sends a message to the boys up in front. Yeah, this jersey is not yours. You're reaching just like everybody else. So if you drop your standard, there's guys knocking and the door might just open up for them.
Now, we remember in the World Cup, most of these scrum halves ended up playing at the wing. Grant Williams, for example, even Kobus Reinach, if I remember correctly. So that answers our question about the lack of depth on the wings. It's probably lying on, in the scrum halves. All these scrum halves are probably going to end up, being backups on wings. What do you think?
I'm not too sure about Faf.
Yeah, at
Not
all.
too sure about Faf.
Yeah.
Grant has shown his pace. Kobus has definitely shown his pace. A guy like Emrose Papier has been playing fantastic rugby, and I think he's a guy that you can put on the wing and he'll still add value. But yes, that's definitely something that they'll look at. Grant Williams, whenever he's played in any position, he comes on and there's an immediate impact. So I like your thinking there. That might be some extra boxes on the wings there with the 9s.
Moving to the pack, starting at 8, Jasper Wiese, the incumbent, Cameron Hanekom, probably the backup. Then you've got Evan Roos, who played out of his skin this past weekend against the Bulls. It showed none of the aggression, unnecessary aggression, off-the-ball aggression, which is something that Rassie wanted him to work on. Frankie Horn from the Lions. Interesting what Dobson said at a press conference this weekend. The first year coming from Parelbourg High was Frankie Horn. The next year was Evan Roos, and the year thereafter was Cameron Hanekom. How do you accommodate all of them? In Province, for example, that's quite an interesting conundrum. And then, of course, first of the Dupree twins, Dan Dupree at 8. I mean, I think that's a fairly set position. But I think in terms of the future, Cameron Hanekom versus Evan Roos, or maybe even Frankie Horn for that matter, but it's probably going to be between Cameron and Evan. What do you see the future playing out there as?
It's a difficult one. Like you said, Evan played out of his skin on the weekend, didn't show any signs of unnecessary roughness, if you want to call it that. Liked his interview afterwards, thanking the management and the players, and he was really appreciative of the service that those that those people have given the team in the week, and I think they were really relieved. But also the way they played on the weekend, it looked like everybody had something or the same thing that Evan had for most games. They were really physical. They were very physical, and that's going to be a difficult one because I think, you know, they play the same type of game, and Horn plays a different type of game, but they all get the same result. You know, they get over gain line, they get rid of the ball when they're in contact, they score, they know where the try line is, and but from all of them, I think Jasper is still probably the more direct player, which suits the way the Boks play most of the time a bit more. But if you've got Cameron coming off the bench, Evan coming off the bench, Frankie, even Dan du Preez, there's a different type of player coming off the bench, which gives you a bit of options.
Lots of people have been asking the question about Cameron or Evan at 6, at Africa 6. What's your thoughts on that?
I think if you look at the question we posed earlier, when if Sia's not playing, what happens to his position? And you've got some extra length because Kwaga's not the tallest. Marco van Staden, I think he jumps in the line. It's not a specialist, but if you've got Cameron and Evan in the line out, on a 6-man ripping, playing off the base, etc. It can be a definite option, and especially if Jasper he doesn't get injured quite a lot. He's playing a lot of games, so I think it can be an option. It can definitely be an option. But you've got good players there. You've got Kwagga, Marco, who I think is also, again, it's probably in the same mold. I can see Kwagga playing. He's played 8 a lot of times before, where Marco, I think, is a specialist 6. And Dion Fourie, obviously, we know is a specialist 6. So I think if I had to look at those two names, Cameron would probably be my choice to experiment at 6.
But moving on to 7, I told you just now I bumped into Elrich Lowe on Monday at the Loftus, still recovering. He's going to be out at least, I think, for a year. But he's the second choice to the obvious candidate, Pieter-Steph du Toit. And I mean, last year, Elrich was off the bench most of the time. He's a natural candidate to take over from Pieter-Steph. Now he's not playing this year. Yeah, he's in the alignment camp and everything else. He's going to be part of the Springboks going forward, will be part of the Springboks going to the World Cup. But for this year, who then do you think is the natural successor to Pieter-Steph? Who's going to play? Is it going to be BJ Dixon, or is it going to be Ruan Venter? For me, it's going to be between those two. Or maybe, I see Cobus Wiese is penciled in as a 7, but I would see him more as a number 4 lock. What's your thoughts on 7?
It's a tough one. I think Dixon played well in the beginning of the season with the Boks, and then as the season went on, his performances went down a bit, and I don't think he might have gotten into his own head and worried about, how am I going to keep the jersey, etc., etc. I'm speculating. But
yeah, we remember against the All Blacks, remember, Rassie took him off before halftime and things like that.
That's right. But what I saw on the weekend, Envia, is something that I think Rassie would have sat back and said, well, that's something I can work with. And that's probably what they've seen from Dixon all along. And it's not just on the weekend. Prior to that, the weekends before, he's been getting stuck in, making turnovers, carrying ball, working, getting across the field. And I think he senses that there's an opportunity for him in terms of that jersey. And Pieter-Steph can't go on playing 80s all the time. So that, and with Elrich especially not being part of the system at the moment, there's definitely an option for him. I think Ruan Venter is a rough diamond still. He's got the physicality. He's definitely got the Aghanyo Moore look. He's a very, very aggressive player. I think he just needs to get some variation within his play. His defense is good. He works hard. On the attack, I remember Wikus van Heerden. He was playing alongside Joe van Niekerk, and both physical. Wikus a bit more physical than Joe, But Joe on attack was just unbelievable. You know, he could get into contact, offload the ball. And I remember Vickers talking to me and saying, I need to change that a bit. I need to put another weapon in my arsenal, and I need to be able to offload. And Vickers was working on his offloads. He always beat the first man with his physicality, but then it becomes a ruck. It's no continuity. And I think the same with, it reminds me of Vickers in the beginning, Ron Fenter, where he's trying to run over people, where he could just tip that ball on after contact, look for the offload. And for me, if he starts showing a bit of variation, coupled with his aggression, his hard-working nature, you know, there's a future for him. But I think he needs to get some variation within his attack.
All right, and then there's another twin there, Jean-Luc du Preez, and then of course Mpilo Gumede, who was not really getting any time to play at the Bulls. He started at 8th man the week before, and last week he was dropped back to the bench. So I'm not seeing him as a serious candidate. I think he's just sort of the, you know, being part of the induction. Now moving on to 6, which is the most important position in terms of the captaincy. Sia's the incumbent captain. He's made it clear he just wants to go to the World Cup. He doesn't have to be captain if that doesn't, you know, work out that way. So in terms of 6, you mentioned Kwagga. That's the national candidate. Marco, who's not had a stellar season, I think is injured again. Harry's mentioned that Marco never looked like he's completely in 100% form or, you know, fitness yet this year. Dion Fourie, I don't know if he's going to make it to 2027 in a World Cup, even if he is a special 6. So to me, it comes down to, you know, the third choice, probably Pepsi Buthelezi and Renzo du Plessis. What do you think of those two?
Mbia, what I'd like to see is how Marco will perform in a system where he plays every single week. It just feels like he tries so hard that it's too hard sometimes. When it feels like he's trying to show whoever's watching he needs to keep his jersey. And you know, it's like that hamster on the wheel. You think the quicker you go, the further you'll get, and you're just staying in one place. And I wonder if Marco gets to a place, and maybe it's a mental thing, where he gets to a place where he doesn't feel like he needs to justify his position or justify his spot in the team, or, you know, not worry about the next game. Am I going to be there? And I mean, that's part of professional sport. Some players can do it, other players battle. Those who can, they go on and they become greats. And those who can't sit with regret that they just couldn't handle that. And I think with Marco, he's an unbelievable asset to a team. I just like to see him play in a team where, you know, he's not worried about if he's going to play next week, or he should change the way he looks at it. And again, I'm speculating, but I get the feeling sometimes that he tries so hard that he's spinning on that wheel, not getting anywhere, and he can add a lot more value if he chooses his fights better, if he stays in the system better, if he's not trying to kill the 9, or, you know. So I'd love to see that mental change within Marco and be really very composed in those situations.
That's interesting for me to hear, because from what I understand, the 6th position at the Bulls is his. Marcel is sort of his backup, but Marco's been injured a lot. And every time he comes back, he gets injured again. And he takes a couple of games to you know, get back to his best form. And every time, just when he starts, you know, getting back to form, he gets injured again. And that's what Harry probably referred to. He seems to be becoming more injury prone. He seems to have lost a yard or two of pace again as well. I've seen some Bulls supporters that are telling me that maybe he should go play hooker. That's an interesting, you know, he can play, and he's played it sort of in the World Cup, but that maybe is an option. I don't think he's placed under threat so much as he can't play. He's injured most of the time.
And even with, and I can't remember the settings for this. The times that Marcel Coetzee played, was Marco van Staden injured, or
Yes.
was he
Injured.
So he was injured every single time?
Yeah.
I think he just needs to compose himself within the system, choose his fights better, be composed, put himself into certain positions, be a high volume tackler. When you carry well, ensure that you keep your ball, and just be that that link between retain and regain as much as possible, because every time he plays, rucks become a problem for the opposition. But then when he gets it wrong, he creates a lot of opportunities for the opposition. So it's a live by the sword, die by the sword. I get the feeling he just tries too hard sometimes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We refer to that as exactly. It takes some time to get back to his stride, and then he tries too hard to get there, and then he doesn't play as well as he can potentially. But your thoughts on Renzo du Plessis and Pepsi Buthelezi?
Pepsi's been playing well. Pepsi's, every game you see him everywhere, and he tries hard. Sometimes it's difficult when the team's not performing. He does his basics really well. Renzo hasn't played a hell of a lot the last couple of games. I know in the Currie Cup he was playing very well. So I haven't seen enough of him at this level to make a judgment. Looks like a class player. Looks like a guy that'll definitely come through the system. But I just haven't seen enough of him at this level.
At 5 is another position that I think we've got a couple of issues. Franco Mostert is first choice, Loor de Jager second. But Loor de Jager, talk about injury prone. The poor guy can't lift an arm and he gets injured again. I don't know. You work in Japan. What have you been seeing of Loort? How's he looking at? And having come back from his injury.
The games I've seen from him, he's been scoring tries. He's been giving some try assists. He's been looking good, and it's a good sign for the box if Loort can be an extra number in that position.
Now, Loort is one of those players that even if he hasn't played 2 years, you're going to select him straight back at number 5 if he's available. Do you agree? Is he probably our first choice there? I mean, Ruan is injured. I don't know if Ruan's going to be ready, but he might be. I saw him walking around at Loftus the other day, heavily braced the knee, but he's there. He's helping with the training and everything else. But is Loort our first choice, or is it going to be Franco?
I think fully fit, it's probably going to be Loort. And depending on the games, they've used Franco in the more physical games. But also when you get Loort starting at 5, you free up Franco and Ruan again for a 7 backup, which, and that's what Rassie got right with these depth charge in terms of guys being able to play different positions. And, although you want specialists, but once you can put a combination together and guys know their roles, and I think that's also an important part of this alignment camp, is telling players, I need you to be able to cover 6, 7, and 8. And if we go 7-1, I need you to be able to play wing or 12. So get that information out there so guys can start familiarizing themselves with the roles of and what's expected of them in those roles. It's easy to say, I need you to play 6. What's the primary role of the 6 in the Springbok team? What is his job? Attack, defense, breakdown, etc.
Right. Number 4, I think that's one position we've got nothing to worry about. Eben is there. Hopefully he's up and running by then, and he should be. Erkje Snyman has been having the time of his life at Leinster, offload king, the Viking. And then Salman Murat, went out to prove something on Saturday against the Bulls. Showed a lot of aggression that he was been accused of not having in the past, and Dobson also commented on that. Jean Klein is in the running, but I mean, he's not really, I don't think he's, he's really in the running. And then, of course, Reinhard Ludwig, the current Bulls captain, but he's playing at 7. He's now been selected as a 4 backup. And then I want to talk about Kobus Wiese, which I mentioned earlier just briefly. He's making an immense impression on me, and I think on most Bulls supporters, playing at 4, not only in terms of what he can do, in general play, but also in the scrum. He's playing a big role in that Bull scrum being so imposing. Your thoughts on 4?
Eben obviously is the man there. Erkje Snyman playing great rugby. Like you said, Murat on the weekend was unbelievable. He was bordering on giving penalties away for just a bit of a late hit on the 9, etc. But it's the first time I've seen him show consistent aggression, consistent physicality, He shows glimpses of it in the game, and then probably on the latter part, it goes away, or he's focusing on something else. But I think the whole Stormers team had a big physicality and aggression focus. And Murat actually he bought into that, so that's good to see. That gives us a number there that you can put on in those types of tests, and you don't have to worry that the physicality level's gone down. Talking about Kobus Wiese, definite impact that he has on the scrums within the Bulls. You can see that when he's gone off a couple of times with injuries, that's also a worry. He's gone off with a couple of injuries in consecutive games, which begs the question: is he playing too much? What type of protocols is he following? But the last one, the hamstring, which is probably going to be a serious one, if you look at the mechanics of that injury and how he got it. He is hoping that it's not as bad as they thought first. So, but he's a player that I think can fit in nicely with the way Rassie wants to play.
Right. And then tight edge, we've got an abundance of talent as well. We've got Frans Malherbe, but just not having the greatest of seasons. Vincent Koch, who also, I think, might be coming towards the end of his career. Wilco Louw, who's been scrumming the daylights out of everybody. Thomas Eto'o, who's a swing prop who can play both sides with. Trevin Yakane, I saw him get injured at Loftus. His Achilles has been torn. He was part of the initial 56. He's now also been included in the virtual lineman camp to be his there. I mean, he's 35. I mean, he's going to be 37 in 2 years' time. I don't know. Needling Fischer, I think, has impressed me a lot. That guy is a very clever scrummer and a strong scrummer. I like the way he plays. And then, of course, the big man himself, the Lions, Asenathi Nhlabakanya. What do you think? What are they going to be looking for at tight end?
Again, Envia, it's a much of a muchness. It's Wilco Louw has been scrumming unbelievably well within that Bulls pack, and I think what Rassie does is he builds up combinations that either start together or they're on the bench together. But the front row has always been this club. It's always been you're part of the front row club, and I think Rassie's kind of embracing that type of feeling, keeping certain guys together. But if you're going to go with a Neethling Fischer, you need a very strong hooker and loose head with him, to ensure and get some really good weight behind him as well, to ensure that he's not thrown into the deep end at the start. So I think that they have to look at how they're going to expose these boys to test rugby and who they're going to surround them with. But there's an abundance, and if you look at Nhlabakanya, he's got great skill. It'll be interesting to hear the report on him after the alignment camp, because I'm pretty sure they'll have a look at the physical condition. They'll do scans and see where guys are physically. And I'd love to know what they think of Nhlabakanya's body composition, because for a big man, he does move well. But I think, if you lose a couple of Ks, you become a bit more mobile and you get over the park, your game might just change for the better.
That's an interesting point, because, scrumming is one thing, but Wilco Louw, for example, has been accused of not doing enough outside of the scrums. Seems to be a bit more quiet when it comes to off the ball and, even ball carrying and the likes. He's not Frans Malherbe. Frans Malherbe, we've seen doing offloads and scoring tries from offloads coming around the corner, like you always say. So mobility is a factor. And if you look at the loose heads, for example, Gerard Steenekamp is immensely strong and immensely impressive for that matter. Doesn't look that big. Even Will could make a good combination. That's what you're referring to. Who do you think, looking at the front row now, just give me a couple of names. I'm going to go to the positions now, but Grobler, for example, has been doing well. Has been blowing hot and cold at hooker, but then he goes and misses, lineouts, basic stuff. Dweba is going to go overseas now because he can't, he doesn't be able to do proper line-out throw-ins. Akker van der Merwe, I'm glad to see he's back in the picture. Jan Hendrik Wessels, where's he going to go? Blue set or hooker? Give me your ideal front row that you would see emerging from these players in that group.
At the moment, there's no, besides Bongi and Malcolm, there's no one else is really putting up their hand, Envia. It feels like, there's a glimpse here and there in certain games, but then, they're either losing line out ball or they're losing ball in contact, their attack goes astray, etc., etc. So at the moment, it's Bongi and Malcolm, and I'd love to see Akker van der Merwe just get back to where he was, the way he played. He's one of those guys that he doesn't accept a tackle. And obviously, coming off the bench, you've got a different role in your team, and you need to approach the games a bit differently. But he's so explosive and he's so dynamic and difficult to make a tackle on. So I'd love to see him, and maybe with Dweba going to the English Premiership now, maybe we see a different part of him, but also a guy that blows hot and cold with the throwing. We always look at the throw when it comes to lineouts, but a couple of the throws have been just too high or too early. I don't know who will take that third spot if Bongi and Malcolm's not there. Grobler's been given a lot of chances. Maybe there's a mental thing that he also needs to work through, but at the moment, there's no one really putting up their hands there.
And then Lucet, Steenekamp, Ox, who are we looking at there?
It'll have to be Steenekamp for me, just because he does so much off the ball as well. I think he's been unlucky with a couple of penalties that's gone against him within the scrums. Guys have been going to their knees before the ball's been put in, and it's not been blown, and then he gets penalized on the next one. So it'll have to be Gerard for me, just because he just works so hard off the ball. On the defense, he gets himself into positions to make big hits. He jackals the ball, and he's always in position. He gets around the corner when he needs to. So for me, it's Gerard all day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing how what a hard day at the office Asenati had against Gerard this game last week when the Bulls played against the Lions. Yeah, I expected that to be more of a battle, but Gerard won that battle hands down on the day.
Yeah, and it's difficult. You're going up against a guy that's really heavy. They beat you sometimes they just beat you on the lean, not even on the hit. They just lean into you, and you're in trouble already. But I think Steenekamp, with the Springbok experience that he's had and the players that he's surrounded him with, he's a clever scrummager, and he's obviously unbelievably strong, which helps as well.
But I talked a bit about conditioning. I heard a story about one of the players joining the Springboks in November. I'm not going to mention his name, but on the autumn tour, he was selected in the group, and then they said, you need to lose 10 kilograms within, I think, 10 days. He was that out of shape, according to the Springboks standards, not necessarily the franchise that he plays for standards. Isn't that a bit of a problem that the conditioning at franchise level is not necessarily what it should be at Springbok level? Is that part of what the alignment camp is supposed to try and do? Get those players, check them, see where they are, and give them some homework to get them on the level where they should be.
For sure. That's definitely going to be part of it. But also, it's a worry that players come into the squad and then have to lose that weight. It begs the question, the communication between the franchises and the Springbok group, they should be checking on those players. I know at some stage, Felix Jones was in Europe, traveling around, going to players, checking on them, seeing how they're doing. But, just a bi-weekly check-in with weight, body composition, etc., to see where the guys are going. You get to the group, and then you get told you need to lose 10 Ks. That's one that fell through the cracks, and it happens. Obviously, sometimes for certain teams, it's more important that you scrum, and for other teams, it's important that you scrum and do A, B, and C, and then you're going to probably need to lose those extra kilos. So the alignment camp's definitely going to check that and ensure that the boys get told this is what we're going to expect of you.
For me, the most interesting thing that's going to emerge from this alignment camp is, where does Felix Jones fit in? I'd love to see that. Is he going to be Tony Brown's right-hand man? Is he going to be Tony Brown's boss? Jerry Flannery's boss, right-hand man? Rassie's right-hand man, overall consultant, and help with this is going to be this. Where does he fit in? I mean, he's a fantastic coach, and we were all excited to have him back. I mean, it's so much happier to have him here than to have him with England or any other team for that matter. What do you think? Where do you see him actually, playing a proper role?
Just purely on the documentaries that we've seen, and we've seen his involvement within the group, I think analysis-wise, he brings something else to the table. He goes deeper than the average Joe, the average analyst. He goes and looks for certain cues. He looks for certain, he looks at body language, etc. So I think analysis-wise, and looking at Ireland's breakdown system and the effectivity of it, maybe he gets involved with the breakdown stuff, because you're trying to install a system with Tony, you're trying to install a system with Jerry. Getting someone in now with the new influence, it might just stall the system, or he's going to be trying to poke holes in their systems and try and help them in that way. So I agree. It's going to be interesting, but the fact that he's back with us, that's great news.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, it's very early days. I mean, we've done a lot of speculating now, but it's interesting to see the mindset, I think. And I think obviously the picture will get clearer as we go forward. Some players are not going to be invited back, but I think it will always be a good experience for a young player, especially like Jay van Heerden, to be invited into this camp and just stand around there with big eyes like this and start absorbing that, because obviously he's a prospect for the future. I like that side of it. Get them involved young, start blooding him into what is the pros, what is a Springbok, what's the processes and likes. That to me makes a lot of sense. Thanks, André. Appreciated that.
Thanks, Envia. Speak to you soon.
It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Envia Veltman, only on Megafoon Rugby.